You're listening to the Productive Therapist Podcast, the world's greatest and most brilliant resource for busy therapists who'd rather be laying on a beach in Hawaii. Every week we share helpful tips on where to put what, how to do this, that, and the other, and the best way to get your ducks in a row. And now here's your host, licensed therapist, head nerd, and productivity Yoda, Uriah Guilford.
Hey, Curt, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's awesome to be having you on the podcast. It was actually, believe it or not, 4 years ago that I did my first podcast interview on your show, The Modern Therapist Survival Guide. That was so long ago.
It does not seem like it has been that long.
I know. I just remember that. I remember being so nervous for that first interview, so much so that I completely botched my introduction and you had to restart the recording. Fortunately, that was the only time that happened thereafter. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
that's the beautiful world of podcasting is nobody has to know until you admit it on air now.
Editing is a wonderful thing. So there you go. Yeah. So you and I recently met up at the Thrive Summit in Utah, and that was a really cool event. And we ended up having tons of conversations about all kinds of random things, from the best and worst concerts to men's retreats to counseling compact to all kinds of great jokes that you come ready to sling. That was a good time, wasn't it?
Oh, I had a great time there.
Yeah. In fact, Megan was messaging me this morning about coming to the Costa Rica retreat, and I'm seriously tempted because she really does put on great events.
If you're listening to this, go and check out Megan's stuff. It was awesome.
Megan Gunnell-Smith. Yeah, good stuff. So I know this is not how you usually roll, but I do want to ask you the funniest joke that you've heard recently or told, if you've got one on tap.
So I like to hit a lot of my clients with things that sound real and then just end up in humor. And one of the ones that I've been pulling out a lot recently is about the calming effects of having an aquarium in your house.
Okay.
A lot of people think that it's just about, having animals or pets, but it's really about the indoor fins.
Yes. That's a good one. I like it. And what's the percentage of people that joke lands on and then they get it?
It's really about 40% who just breathe heavily through their nose, and another 40% that give some sort of adequate laugh. Yeah,
I love that those first 40% never faze you. That's that's an amazing thing. So I've got a terrible joke for you.
Go for it.
How much does it cost for a pirate to get his ears pierced?
I would have to guess that that's a buccaneer.
I knew you would know that one. Indeed, it's a buccaneer. Yeah, that's not the best joke. I have like 3 jokes in my repertoire, and I'm not nearly as quick-witted as you. So thanks for teaching me some of your ways. So one of the things that we talked about when we were in Utah, just came up in conversation, was about you hiring an assistant for your group practice. And that's kind of what I wanted to chat with you about today. And so I'm curious, like the first question I have for you, actually, let me step back a second. I would love for you to share with the audience, folks who don't know about you, a little bit about who you are and about your practice. I think that would be great.
My name is Curt Widhalm. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I have a group practice with 2 locations in the greater Los Angeles area. We primarily work a lot with adolescents, and almost all of our staff is trained or certified or working towards certification in EMDR. So we get a lot of trauma in our practice as well, a lot of family systems work. And as you mentioned at the top of the show, I also have a podcast called The Modern Therapist Survival Guide for therapists about a wide variety of topics facing therapists in our profession today.
Awesome. Yeah. And if people have not heard of that podcast, I would be shocked. But if you haven't, go check it out right now, because it's I think probably one of the best, most listened to, top rated podcasts out there for therapists. So that's cool.
Thank you.
So I'm curious what challenges you were facing that led you to the decision to hire an admin assistant.
I am an overworker. I readily admit that I take on too much and pull myself in too many directions. And for years, both my in real life wife as well as my work wife, my podcast co-host Katie, have both been telling me you should offload some of your work to other people. And it has just taken me a very long time to get to the point of, number one, being overwhelmed enough to actually do it. And number two, having enough of a break in my schedule to actually seek out and find somebody to go on the journey and offload some of the stuff that I have just taken on myself because it was just easier for me to keep doing something rather than slow down and train somebody else to do it.
That makes so much sense. And you're definitely not the only one being coerced by people who care to do less and share the load. So are you saying that the podcast that we recorded in 2018 didn't really move the needle with that?
I listened to you and I took those words to heart, and then I put them behind several hundred other things that I do in my day-to-day job. And it was always kind of there. I had initially taken an approach in my practice when I started just having associates in my practice, that I didn't start out hiring other licensed people. And it's takes a while for a lot of associates to build up a caseload. So one of the ways that I would help them be able to live and be able to focus on building a practice is I would offload some of my day-to-day tasks, teach them things about running a practice and editing a podcast or any kinds of skills that I would just pay them to do some things around the office that would help offload some of this stuff. The problem became that a lot of them got licensed. They were good therapists and wanted to go and do therapy. And so every couple of years I was having to train somebody new to do some of the same things. And I just got to a point where I was like, I want my therapist doing therapy. They went to therapy school to become therapists. This is their skills. Maybe I should just, stop reinventing the wheel every couple of years and hire somebody dedicated just to doing some of these tasks, being able to look at my overall processes and say, Curt, you're trained as a therapist. You work as a group practice owner. You're seeing clients. You're doing a podcast. Maybe I can do some of this stuff more efficiently. So that was really kind of I wanted to invest in somebody to be able to really take on some of those bigger roles for me and make my life easier.
Yeah. And somebody whose expertise and area of specialty is the things that you don't want to do and that you would like to get help with. I like that a lot. And so you're saying you were delegating to your pre-licensed therapists in your practice, but they would come in and then not stick around for a long time. And it was not maybe the best use of their time. Is that right?
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Cool. And so even though your work wife and your real life wife were telling you that you needed to work less and get some help, when was the inflection point where you finally figured like, oh yeah, this needs to happen now? Like what pain did you feel, I guess is what I'm asking.
I had a couple of weeks here at the beginning of 2022, end stages, hopefully, of the pandemic, where I had like 5 cancellations on my caseload in the week. And my wife goes, well, how many clients does that mean that you have this week? And I counted it up and I still had 33 sessions scheduled that week.
Whoa.
And I was just like, I don't want to do this forever. I don't want to be tied into doing this. There's so many things that so many people are asking me to get done that just stay on this never ending to-do list. I need to use this now free 5 hours in my week that should be going to taking care of myself to actually maybe making a long-term investment in not running into this kind of stress over and over again.
So if my math is correct, that's 38 scheduled clients you
had 38 at one time? That week. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And you are not a psychiatrist, right? You're not doing 15-minute in and outs.
It was a very strange combination of a couple of clients in crisis, a couple of clients who were back from out of state for spring break and wanted to get a session in before they had to go back to their out of state colleges. And it was just something where I don't usually keep a caseload that high, but I had a very hard time saying no to a number of people all at once, along with some increasing just severity of some of the people that I was treating at the time.
Sure. Okay. I gotcha. And that you realize that's not sustainable. And also some of the other things that you're working on ended up on this never ending to-do list that probably came with its own sense of overwhelm, I would imagine.
Yeah. And that was just the client facing side of me. That I also had supervision. I had to look at any of our social media stuff going out, our newsletters, our just kind of plans for the next 6 to 9 months, and was having to reschedule meetings with my staff. And it was just something where it was like, I don't even have time to return calls to some of my clients who are calling me in between sessions. I should have somebody here that really just takes care of this stuff, somebody that I can trust to be able to at least get my schedule straightened out and allow for me to be able to send them a message and be like, hey, here's things that need to get done tomorrow. So that way my 10-hour day isn't 12 hours.
Yeah. You need like triage with your calendar and your voicemail, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Needed. Yeah. So when you started the process of recruiting and hiring an assistant, what did you find that was the toughest part?
So I put an ad onto Indeed and put it as a remote position. I don't need somebody in my office, especially as a lot of what we're doing is telehealth. And within the first 12 hours, I got approximately 800 applications.
Right.
And I'd never used Indeed before. So it was just kind of like, getting notifications. I don't remember if I was getting a ton of emails or whatever, but it was just like, oh, I am not going to do any justice to the people who've already applied. I'm just going to close this ad down, and I'm going to pick like 5 or so people that seem good enough. And those are going to be the people that I hopefully will land on somebody who ends up wanting to work with me.
So the volume was overwhelming, right? Yeah.
And I realize in the job market that a lot of people are going to apply for any number of jobs. There was a lot of resumes that I looked at that was like, I don't think you really want to be an office assistant in a group psychotherapy practice. And so some of them were pretty easy to filter out. I also know that with Indeed, or I learned in the process that when you put that a job is remote, that it puts it out to the entirety of the country. And
this is true.
Paying Los Angeles wages, which invited a number of people to apply from a lot lower cost of living areas across the country. And, for one reason or another, the 5 or so people that I reached out to, I was fortunate enough to actually find a couple of people who lived in the Los Angeles area that I really wanted to make an effort to try and interview, because what I really started to think about in some of the tasks that I would be offloading is, if this is eventually going to be somebody who's answering the phones for me, there's a great ability for people who know the geography of like, oh, you got to go past the 405 and you got to get off at this exit, and just knowing what landmarks are around and knowing the feel of like what Los Angeles traffic is like, that really adds a little bit more of a personal touch, even though this is somebody who I think has been to my physical office once now in the 4 months that they've been working for me.
Yeah, it does make a difference. I think those things can be taught to somebody who lives somewhere else. But in my experience, when I'm talking to somebody who's clearly in another state or another country, and it's about a local business. Once upon a time, I called it a local HVAC company, and I realized pretty quickly this person is not in my area. And then, it's kind of a different feel to have somebody that knows, like you said, the geography and the landmarks, especially in a big city like Los Angeles, I would think. And it's cool. One of the things you did that I love doing actually is hiring local remote people. So they're close enough to your office space that they can come in. Even if it's not super convenient, they can come in every once in a while and, pick up papers or, I don't know, do any number of things in the office. But then they can work for the most part from home. I think that's a great way to go. My practice manager is actually about 45 minutes away from here. So, once a month or so she comes in, and that's super nice. Let me take just a quick pause and tell you a bit about our sponsor. This episode has been sponsored by Simple Practice, the leading practice management platform for private practitioners everywhere. More than 75,000 professionals use Simple Practice to power telehealth sessions, schedule appointments, file insurance claims, communicate with clients, and so much more. It truly is an all-in-one HIPAA-compliant platform. Get your first 2 months of Simple Practice for the price of one when you sign up for an account today. This exclusive offer is valid for new customers only, and you can go to simplepractice.com/productive therapist to learn more. You know, it's funny, you were talking about the getting applications from all over the country. We get that too. And even though at the top of our job posting, it says, if you're not in these states, you will be disregarded. Still tons and tons of people from all over the country apply. So we just delete those. Yeah.
And I have in the past in hiring, not necessarily for this position, in a lot of my posts will put something kind of ridiculous in the application just to more easily weed out people. Like there was one time where I was hiring clinicians specifically to work with teenagers, and part of the application process was to also submit your favorite therapy memes. And it was very easy from the very beginning to be like, oh, these people can't follow directions. And probably the first time that many professionals had to do something kind of off the wall for one of their applications, but it actually cost them an opportunity to interview with me.
So was that in the actual application process? Was it in the job posting where you requested?
It was in the job posting and the applications. As part of your application, send this.
Send how was it stated? Your favorite or some interesting or any?
Your favorite therapy meme.
That's so fantastic. I love that. It's always nice to put those little tests in there to make sure that people are paying attention. Because, if you're hiring an admin assistant, you want them to be really somebody that's detail oriented and somebody that follows directions. And so those can be sort of filters, right, to keep people out that don't meet those criteria. I'm curious, what do you wish you knew before starting this process of hiring an assistant?
I wish that I had set aside more time initially up front just for training. That it came as I mentioned, a lot of my schedule was very busy at the time. So knowing that, all right, to teach somebody kind of the culture of our workplace, to introduce them to the systems, that to even just be able to have them get to know me and my staff better, of being able to really set aside the time of, all right, here's where you're jumping in, creating a very opening environment, but really just the amount of time that's necessary to get somebody caught up is no joke.
How long do you think that is? Like if you were going to hire another assistant today, how much time, roughly speaking, would you allow yourself for like the onboarding and training?
Well, hopefully in the next iteration of this, my current assistant is the one training their replacement. Right. But
yes,
I wish that I had set aside 10 to 15 hours a week for at least 2 to 3 weeks just to catch them up. I think it would have saved a lot of just back and forth and very easily avoidable mistakes that requires some double checking. And I think that a lot of the things that my assistant's doing now is helping to just compile a lot of these processes and get them going. So that way it's not starting from, basically ground zero at the very beginning of each new employee.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because I think that's something that most therapists and group practice owners don't account for, is the amount of intentional time, training, coaching that goes into really getting an assistant on board and creating a good experience for them, honestly, that's not stressful and overwhelming. There's this concept that I heard years ago about delegating and outsourcing, and they call it the trough of sorrow, which is basically this point at which your personal productivity has a major dip and you feel like, I could just do this myself and it would be faster. Maybe I shouldn't move forward with delegating and outsourcing. But you go through that low point, and then you come out the other side once you've done a good job. And then the person then you start to feel the benefits of having them take on those tasks and those projects for you. But it's a rough spot, isn't it?
And knowing just how my schedule typically goes throughout the year, I wish that I would have done this in the summer rather than at the busiest point in my schedule, just because it more naturally would have fit for having somebody be able to go through this. I'm already in a trough of my own productivity, as a lot of my clients are on vacations or stuff like that.
Yeah, so timing is important. You can't always decide that because sometimes if you have a need, you need to hire. But if that's good advice, if you can do it during a time that's slow for your business, whether it's summer or spring break or whatever that might be, that's a good idea for sure. So just for the folks listening, I just want them to know that we have two things that can really help. One is a course called Hiring Your Assistant, which is basically all of the tips and experience that we've had over the last 5 years of hiring assistants, kind of put into one course. It's totally free at productivetherapist.com/PTM. And then we also have something called Therapy Intake Pro, where we will train and support your intake coordinator or care coordinator once you hire them. So those are two resources that people can take advantage of. One's free and then one's a membership. And would you have any final advice for somebody listening to this and thinking about hiring an assistant soon, maybe even this summer? Anything else that we didn't talk about?
One of my approaches to hiring is I don't let perfect get in the way of good enough for a lot of my employees, that it can be very easy to go through 800 applications and look for the absolutely perfect person. But really, with a lot of positions at all levels of a practice, you're going to spend a lot of time. And typically I've had the experience of usually the first person that seems like, oh, well, they're good enough, has worked out wonderfully well at my practice. So I know that this is maybe a time where you're offloading a lot of your babies in your practice, things that you've done forever that have only been your touch. It takes a little bit of, just humility to be able to say, actually, a lot of people can do this and they don't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be me.
Yeah, 80%, done at 80% or more is good enough for most things. Yeah. I think, trusting your intuition and your gut is not always the best advice, but I think it's important for this role, whether it's a general admin assistant or a care coordinator. I think your person is like working up to being sort of whatever you call that.
Yeah.
I think it's important to hire somebody that you connect with and that you feel comfortable with, because the more you just, for lack of a better word, kind of vibe with them and enjoy being with them, the more you're going to want to spend time with them in training and down the road too. So I think that matters a lot. And I'm guessing you hired a fun person too, right?
Oh, my number one requirement for everybody working for me is they have to be able to put up with me.
Yeah, right. Otherwise, you're not going to make it. That's fantastic. I love it. Well, thanks so much for being on the podcast. I would love for you to just share a little bit more about where people can find out about you and your awesome podcast.
You can find out me and my practice at realhonesttherapy.com. And my podcast is the Modern Therapist Survival Guides. We're on pretty much all of the podcast platforms, and that's a weekly podcast for therapists.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Curt. Have a good day.
Thank you.